the bunny woman who always sat beside me on the train. Could a silent passenger, a creature from another star system tucked into a commuter train seat, hold the key to an interstellar peace treaty? Every morning, Vector watched the bunny woman, Zephyr, her long ears twitching with an unspoken anxiety that mirrored his own quiet longing. He wondered if the worn notebook she clutched contained daily thoughts or secrets of galactic consequence. A sudden, unexpected delay in their routine journey would soon force a conversation, unraveling not just her mysteries, but the very fabric of his unassuming existence on Ethel. Vector settled into his usual seat, the worn synth fabric molding to his frame with familiar comfort. Every morning, the express commuter train to Sector 7 followed an unvarying schedule, a rhythm Vector relied on. He adjusted the strap of his datapad bag, then allowed his gaze to drift to the seat beside him. Zephyr was already there, as always. Her cream fur glowed softly under the cabin lights, her long, sensitive ears angled slightly towards the window. She wore a simple, charcoal gray tunic and trousers, practical and unassuming. Her delicate fingers moved with swift precision across the pages of her small, leather-bound notebook, a constant companion. He never spoke to her, not directly. Their interaction was a ballet of quiet acknowledgments, a shared glance when he first boarded, a subtle nod from him, a fleeting, almost imperceptible dip of her head in return. Her ears would twitch just slightly whenever the train engaged its magnetic brakes, a tiny tremor of nervous energy. Vector found himself watching for it, a secret signal in their shared solitude. He often wondered about the contents of her notebook. Was it a diary? Complex equations? A shopping list for some exotic Kalan delicacy? The thought always brought a small, private smile to his lips. Today, however, the train's rhythm faltered. Instead of the smooth glide between the hydroponic farms and the city's outer rings, a sudden, jarring lurch threw Vector forward against his safety harness. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Then, silence. The engine's steady thrum vanished, replaced by an unsettling quiet that magnified the muffled sounds of the distant city. Zephyr's ears, usually poised with a gentle awareness, flattened against her head, a clear sign of agitation. Her hand paused, hovering above the open notebook. Vector felt a strange current of concern. "Unscheduled stop," Vector said, the words feeling clumsy and loud in the sudden stillness. He immediately regretted breaking their long-standing quiet pact. Zephyr's ears twitched once more, then slowly lifted. She turned her head, her large, dark eyes meeting his. They held a depth he hadn't noticed before, a flicker of something ancient and tired. "Indeed," she replied, her voice soft, with a melodic lilt that hinted at a different origin. "An inconvenience." "It happens," Vector offered, trying to sound nonchalant. "Maintenance often catches up with the old tracks, or a power surge." He gestured vaguely towards the ceiling. "Nothing serious." She offered a small, hesitant smile. "I hope not. My morning schedule is rather tight." Her gaze drifted back to her notebook, then to the window, as if seeking answers in the blurred landscape. "Mine too," Vector admitted, a sudden desire to keep the conversation going surprising him. Another day of data analysis. The numbers never stop. He chuckled, a dry, self-deprecating sound. Zephyr's eyes met his again, a spark of understanding in them. "The numbers often feel like an endless ocean, do they not?" she mused. "Always more to process, more to understand, rarely a true conclusion." Vector found himself nodding. "Exactly. It is a peculiar comfort, though, a predictable tide." He paused. "What kind of work do you do, if you don't mind my asking?" Her ears swiveled slightly, a delicate movement. "I am involved in a project," she said, her voice dropping a fraction. "A rather intricate one. It requires extensive documentation and observation." She tapped the cover of her notebook lightly, "and a great deal of patience." "Sounds intense," Vector commented. "More complex than quarterly reports, I imagine." A genuine smile, quick and radiant, touched her lips. "Significantly more complex, yes. A faint blush, a delicate rose hue, appeared on the tips of her ears. The stakes are somewhat higher. Vector felt a peculiar warmth spread through him. The unspoken tension of their shared silence had evaporated. He realized he wanted to know more about her project, about the world she came from, about the delicate blush on her ears. It was a novel feeling, an unfamiliar pull towards another person. "It must be challenging," he said, genuinely curious. "Being away from your home world, I mean, with such high stakes." Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a thoughtful expression. "Kaelin is very different from Ethel. The pace, the light, the very air, but my work here is important, essential even." She looked at him, her gaze steady. "There are many things to learn, many connections to be made." A sudden jolt reverberated through the train. The cabin lights flickered, then stabilized. The low thrum of the engine returned, gradually building to its familiar rhythm. The train lurched forward, slowly at first, then gaining speed. Zephyr's ears twitched once, a nervous habit, but this time it seemed to carry a different resonance. A sense of relief, perhaps, mixed with something else, something unresolved. "Looks like we're moving again," Vector said, a hint of regret in his voice that the interruption was over. "Yes," Zephyr replied, her fingers already returning to her notebook, though she didn't immediately write. She looked at Vector one last time, her dark eyes holding his. A brief, genuine smile, more open than any he had seen from her before, passed between them. It was a silent agreement, a quiet acknowledgement that their world, confined to this train carriage, had fundamentally shifted. The predictable tide had indeed turned. Vector felt a spark ignite within him, a warmth that promised more than just another day of numbers. The next morning, Vector arrived at the station earlier than usual. He found Zephyr already in their customary seat, her notebook open, a faint smile touching her lips as he approached. "Good morning, Vector," she said, her voice soft. "Morning, Zephyr," he replied, settling beside her. "I thought I might catch the earlier service today." She nodded. "I often do." Their new routine began without explicit agreement. Days turned into weeks. They started arriving together, sharing the first quiet moments of their morning commute. Their conversations shifted from train delays and Ethelian work pressures to deeper inquiries. "Kaelin sounds beautiful," Vector commented one morning, after Zephyr described its bioluminescent flora. She sighed, a delicate sound. "It is, very different from Ethel. We have no towering metal spires reaching for the sky. Our structures grow with the living landscape." Her ears drooped slightly. "I miss its quiet energy sometimes. The way the light filters through the canopy." Vector listened intently. He found himself sharing details of his own life he had never spoken aloud, his quiet aspirations for a life beyond data analysis, the subtle frustrations of his predictable world. Zephyr met his confessions with an understanding gaze, her empathy a comforting balm. He realized his long-held solitude had begun to recede, replaced by a novel sense of companionship. "My work here requires extensive observation," Zephyr explained one Tuesday, her ears twitching with a familiar rhythm. "I learn about Ethel's culture, its diplomatic nuances. It is part of a larger cultural exchange program between our planets." She paused, her gaze distant. "My superiors on Kaelin believe such insights are crucial for future peace." "That sounds incredibly important," Vector said, truly impressed. "And challenging. So many new things to adapt to." "Indeed," she agreed. "There are many subtle protocols to follow, many layers to understand." Their shared train ride extended to pre-work coffee at a small cafe near the station. These meetings became a cherished ritual. Vector discovered Zephyr's quiet humor, her surprising insights into Ethelian society, and her fierce, yet gentle, intelligence. He found himself drawn to her quiet resilience, the hidden strength beneath her delicate appearance. During one such coffee session, Zephyr's ears twitched more frequently than usual. She kept glancing towards the cafe entrance, her movements subtle but noticeable. My observational protocols require constant vigilance, she murmured, stirring her drink, especially with, well, unforeseen disruptions. Disruptions? Vector asked, sensing her unease. She offered a small, reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, just the usual complexities of interspecies relations. Misunderstandings, unexpected challenges. Her gaze swept over the other patrons, lingering for a moment on a tall figure sitting alone in a corner booth, hunched over a data slate. Vector followed her gaze. The man wore a nondescript dark uniform, his face obscured by a low-brimmed cap. "Is everything all right?" Vector asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Zephyr's ears flattened slightly, a clear sign of heightened tension. "It is. Just a part of the work, constant assessment." She quickly changed the subject, directing the conversation back to his day, but Vector registered the shift in her demeanor. Her usual quiet anxiety had intensified. Later that week, as they waited for their train on the platform, Vector noticed the same man from the cafe. He stood near the far end of the platform, seemingly engrossed in his data slate, but his head tilted slightly in their direction. Vector felt an unnerving prickle on his skin. He glanced at Zephyr. Her ears were flattened against her head, her movements unusually still. She was watching the man too, her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. The man looked up, his gaze sweeping across the platform before settling directly on them for a fraction too long. Vector felt a sudden, protective surge. He instinctively stepped a little closer to Zephyr, subtly shielding her. "Vector," Zephyr said, her voice barely a whisper, "we need to be mindful of our surroundings." "I am," he replied, his voice low and firm. He didn't understand the full scope of her anxieties, but he understood the feeling of being watched, of something being wrong. He felt a deep, unwavering desire to ensure her safety, a feeling that had grown quietly but powerfully within him over these past weeks. Zephyr looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a shared acknowledgement of a burgeoning alliance, forged in the quiet hum of a commuter train and tested by the subtle shadows on an Ethelian platform. The train arrived, its doors hissing open. Vector and Zephyr boarded, finding their usual seats. The familiar rhythm of the journey began, but the subtle unease from the platform lingered. Zephyr's ears twitched almost imperceptibly, her gaze sweeping the carriage with practiced vigilance. Vector felt his own muscles tense, a silent echo of her anxiety. He watched the cityscape blur outside the window, but his attention remained acutely tuned to Zephyr. "Anything today?" he asked, his voice low, as the train glided through a tunnel. Zephyr shook her head, her fingers tightening around her notebook. "Not yet, but the air feels different." Her eyes, usually soft, held a keen edge. The unforeseen disruptions are becoming less unforeseen. A sudden, violent jolt rocked the carriage, throwing passengers forward. A high-pitched screech of metal filled the air, followed by a sickening grind. The lights flickered, then died, plunging them into a sudden, disorienting darkness. A few shouts erupted, quickly stifled by the general shock. Vector instinctively reached out, steadying Zephyr as she stumbled. Her notebook flew from her grasp, skidding across the floor and sliding open beneath a seat. "Are you all right?" Vector asked, his hand firmly on her arm. "Yes," Zephyr gasped, her voice tight. "The notebook." Before Vector could retrieve it, a beam of light cut through the gloom. 3 figures in dark uniforms, distinct from typical Ethelian transit security, appeared at the end of the carriage. One of them, the man from the cafe and platform, held a portable scanner. His eyes, now unobscured, were cold and calculating. "Security check," he announced, his voice devoid of warmth. "Remain calm. We are looking for something specific." His gaze swept the carriage, pausing briefly when it landed on Zephyr. Vector felt a cold dread. This was no random inspection. He saw the glint of the scanner as it passed over Zephyr's notebook. The device emitted a sharp, insistent chirp. The man's eyes widened slightly. "There it is," the agent said, pointing a gloved finger. "Retrieve the data module." Another agent moved quickly towards the notebook. Zephyr froze, her face paling. Vector knew he had mere seconds. This was the disruption she had feared, the moment her quiet mission would unravel. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the raw fear beneath her composed exterior. His mind raced. He had to create a distraction. Without thinking, Vector shouted, "My bag!" Someone grabbed my bag. He pointed wildly towards the opposite end of the carriage, away from Zephyr and the notebook. His voice, usually quiet, boomed in the confined space. The agents hesitated, their attention momentarily diverted by the sudden commotion. Vector, leveraging his unassuming appearance, pushed past a startled passenger, feigning panic as he stumbled towards the supposed thief. "Hey, stop him!" he yelled, making sure his movements were clumsy and attention-grabbing. The lead agent snapped, "Stay calm, citizen. There's no thief." But the brief confusion was enough. Zephyr, seizing the precious window, scrambled for her notebook. Her nimble fingers snatched it from beneath the seat, tucking it securely into her clothing. She met Vector's eyes for a fraction of a second, a silent message of gratitude passing between them. Then, with surprising speed, she slipped past the distracted agents and darted towards the emergency exit at the far end of the carriage, pulling the release lever. The door hissed open, revealing the dark, grimy service tunnel. "She's escaping," the lead agent roared, finally realizing Vector's ploy. He pushed past passengers, but Zephyr was already gone, disappearing into the darkness of the tunnel. Vector, his heart pounding, watched her vanish. He had acted on pure instinct, a protective surge that had overridden all caution. He stood there, feigning continued distress, as the agents cursed and began to organize a search party, their focus now entirely on Zephyr's escape route. He knew they wouldn't find her easily in the labyrinthine service tunnels. After what felt like an eternity, the agents moved out of the carriage, leaving behind a few stunned passengers. Vector slowly made his way to the emergency exit, peering into the tunnel. He saw nothing but shadows. His breath hitched. Had she truly escaped? Was she safe? A soft whisper reached him from the darkness. "Vector, over here." He turned, relief washing over him. Zephyr emerged from a maintenance alcove, her small form almost invisible in the dim light. Her ears were flattened, but her eyes held a fierce determination. She pulled him into the narrow space, her movements efficient and urgent. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible but brimming with raw emotion. "You saved me." "Who were they?" Vector asked, his mind reeling. The implications of what he had just witnessed were staggering. Zephyr took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on his. "They were not security. They are agents of a powerful faction within Ethel's government, seeking to destabilize the peace between our worlds." Her voice was steady now, infused with a newfound resolve. "My cultural exchange program was a cover. I am Zephyr, diplomat plenipotentiary from the Lagorian High Council, operating undercover." Vector felt a profound shock. The quiet bunny woman, the nervous commuter, was a high-ranking diplomat, a spy. His mind struggled to reconcile the image. A conspiracy. "Yes," Zephyr confirmed, her grip on his arm surprisingly strong. "They want to exploit Kaelin's unique energy resources. My notebook contains critical evidence of their illicit activities. This incident proves they knew I was close to exposing them." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his. "I am in grave danger. My mission is compromised, but I cannot fail." Vector processed her words, the magnitude of the revelation settling over him. He was no longer just an observer. He was involved deeply and irrevocably. His quiet life on Ethel had just collided with an interstellar crisis. Yet amidst the fear, a strange clarity emerged. He had chosen to help her, and he would continue to do so. His knowledge of Ethel, its hidden paths, its overlooked corners, suddenly felt vital. He had always noticed details others missed. Now those details could be the difference between success and failure, life and death. "I will help you," Vector said, his voice firm, unwavering. He met her gaze, a silent promise passing between them. The previous understanding on the platform had been a nascent alliance. This was its full, unshakable birth. Zephyr's ears lifted slightly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. This faction, they are deeply entrenched. We do not know who leads them or how far their influence stretches. We are alone. Vector nodded. The questions hung in the air. Who were they truly fighting? How could two unlikely allies, one an exposed diplomat, the other a quiet observer, possibly stand against such a powerful, clandestine force? The answers remained elusive, but the path forward, though perilous, was clear. They would face it together. The air in the service tunnel was thick with the scent of metal and damp earth. "We need to move," Zephyr said, her voice low. Her ears scanned the echoes. "My contact, Ambassador Ilara, will be expecting me. But I cannot go to our rendezvous point now. It will be watched." Vector nodded, his mind already racing. "There's a maintenance exit 2 sectors down. It leads into the old industrial district, mostly abandoned. Less surveillance there." He took her hand, a practical gesture that felt profound. "Can you run?" "I am Lagorian," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips despite the urgency. "We are built for speed." They moved quickly, Zephyr's light steps barely disturbing the grit underfoot, Vector matching her pace. The tunnel was a labyrinth of dim lights and humming conduits, a world away from the polished carriages above. He pointed out rusted access panels, ignored sensor arrays, and defunct ventilation shafts. "This way," he murmured, pulling open a heavy door that led into a narrow alleyway behind a derelict factory. Ethel's sprawling cityscape loomed, a familiar sight now seen through the lens of evasion. The sun, a warm orange disk, had risen, casting long shadows. "The safe house is a non-option," Zephyr stated, her ears flattened slightly. "They will have monitored my last transmission. They know my general location." "Then we disappear," Vector said, leading her through a maze of service alleys. He knew these paths, the forgotten arteries of the city, places where official eyes rarely looked. He saw the city not as a series of grand boulevards, but as a network of cracks and crevices, perfect for vanishing. They emerged onto a less traveled street, blending with early morning workers. Zephyr pulled a simple hooded cloak from her pack, covering her distinctive ears, a quick, practiced motion. "My work here was supposed to be subtle," she muttered, a hint of frustration in her tone. "Now I am a fugitive." "You're a diplomat exposing corruption," Vector countered. "There's a difference." He led her into a small, nondescript cafe, its windows steamed from the morning rush. "We need to think. Where would your contact go if the rendezvous was compromised?" Zephyr ordered a nutrient paste, her eyes darting around the room. "Ilara has an emergency protocol. A secondary location, known only to a few trusted operatives. A data drop point disguised as an old public archive terminal." She paused. "It's in the Civic Records Building, Level 3. Vector knew the Civic Records Building. Its architecture was a monument to bureaucracy, a place where people went to get lost in paperwork. High security, but the public terminals are in a less restricted zone. Tricky, but possible. His mind began mapping out routes, entry points, and potential exits. "I need to access it," Zephyr insisted. "Ilara might have left a message, or even partial data. We need any lead we can get about this faction." They spent the next few hours moving, using Vector's knowledge of the public transport system's blind spots and pedestrian shortcuts. He noticed the subtle shifts in security patrols, the deployment of new, unmarked surveillance drones. The city was tightening its grip. "They're searching for me actively now," Zephyr observed, her ears twitching with increased frequency. "Their presence is stronger." She looked at Vector, her gaze intense. "If we go to the Civic Records Building, we risk direct confrontation." "We need information," Vector replied, his resolve hardening. "Staying hidden forever isn't a plan. We hit them where they don't expect it, at their own game." He felt a surge of unexpected confidence. This was a challenge, and he was rising to it. The quiet observer was becoming a strategist. They approached the Civic Records building from the north, through a forgotten park. Vector pointed out a ventilation shaft leading into the lower levels. We can bypass the main entrance, avoid the scanners. It's a tight squeeze, but it's cleaner. Zephyr studied the shaft. My species can contort ourselves more than most. I can manage it. Her determination was palpable, overriding her innate caution. You lead. The air within the shaft was stale and metallic. They crawled in darkness, Vector guiding Zephyr with hushed instructions. He felt her hand on his ankle, a constant, reassuring contact. This wasn't just about survival. It was about trust, a fragile bridge built between worlds. They emerged into a seldom-used service corridor, dusty and silent. Vector checked the schematics on his datapad. Level 3. The public archives are straight ahead. The corridor opened into a vast, circular room filled with ancient data terminals. A few scattered citizens browsed digital records. Vector scanned the faces, his heightened senses alert for any sign of danger. The Lagorian public access terminal, Zephyr whispered, pointing to a unit in the far corner, almost hidden behind a towering pillar of archived data drives. As they moved, Vector caught a flicker of movement, a figure in the shadows near the terminal. He pulled Zephyr back, pressing her against the cold metal of a data rack. Someone's waiting, he breathed. They anticipated you. Zephyr's eyes widened. Ambush. Her ears dropped, then stiffened. They knew Ilara's emergency protocol. A man stepped from the shadows, tall and imposing, wearing the distinct uniform of Ethel's internal security but with no insignia. He held a small, sleek device. Zephyr, diplomat of Kaelin, the man's voice was calm, chillingly precise. Your mission ends here. Vector felt a cold dread, but his grip on Zephyr's arm tightened. He wouldn't let her go. He saw the man's eyes not looking at them but at the terminal. That was the target, the data. Vector, Zephyr whispered, her voice barely audible. The chip, it must be there. Ilara would never let them have it. The man took another step. Vector knew they had seconds. He had to create another distraction. He saw a loose power conduit running along the floor, a risky move. He lunged, not at the agent but at the conduit, yanking it free with all his strength. Sparks showered, and the power to the entire section of the archive flickered, then died. Alarms blared, a piercing wail that echoed through the vast room. Chaos erupted. Citizens screamed, fumbling in the sudden dimness. The agent cursed, momentarily disoriented by the disruption. Go, Vector shouted, pushing Zephyr towards the terminal. Get the chip. Zephyr didn't hesitate. She darted through the panicked crowd, her smaller frame an advantage. Vector, meanwhile, became a moving target, dodging the agent's lunges, creating a diversion. He wasn't trained for combat, but he was quick, resourceful, and desperate. Zephyr reached the terminal, her fingers flying across the interface. The screen, though dim, still showed a faint glow. She inserted a small, metallic device into a hidden slot, a flash of light. A small data chip ejected into her waiting palm. Got it, she yelled, turning to Vector. The agent, recovering, aimed his device at Zephyr. Vector saw the intent in his eyes. He wouldn't let her be taken. With a burst of adrenaline, Vector tackled the agent, sending them both crashing into a stack of ancient data drives. Papers and disks scattered. The agent's device skittered across the floor. Run, Zephyr. Vector grunted, struggling with the larger man. Get out of here. Zephyr hesitated for only a second. She knew Vector's sacrifice was not in vain. Her mission, their mission, was bigger than one capture. She sprinted for the nearest exit, the data chip clutched tight in her hand. Vector fought not to win, but to buy time. He took a blow to the jaw, tasting blood, but he held on, his mind focused only on Zephyr's escape. He saw her vanish through the door just as two more agents, drawn by the alarms, burst into the archive. He knew he was caught, but Zephyr was free, and she had the evidence. His quiet life on Ethel was now irrevocably shattered, but he had helped her, given her a chance. A strange, quiet satisfaction settled over him, even as the agents moved in. Zephyr sprinted through the archive exit, the data chip burning in her hand. The alarm screamed, a symphony of panic that covered her escape. She didn't look back. Vector's sacrifice was a searing image in her mind, a debt she swore to repay. Each pounding step was for him, for the peace he had helped preserve. The service tunnels were her only refuge, a familiar maze of concrete and shadowed pipes. She moved with an animalistic grace, her sensitive ears filtering the distant shouts of agents, the thrum of the city above. Her diplomatic training had prepared her for negotiation, not evasion. Vector's street wisdom, his quiet observations, had been her shield. Now she was alone. Guilt gnawed at her, sharp and cold. He had given everything, his unassuming life shattered for her mission. His image, struggling with the agent, flashed behind her eyes. He had called out to her, a command to run, a plea she could not ignore. She clutched the data chip tighter. This evidence, Vector's freedom and the fate of two worlds, now rested solely on her. Her mind raced, sifting through contingency plans, half-forgotten instructions from Ambassador Ilara. Her official channels were compromised. Her safe house was blown. There was one last option, a desperate long shot, a ghost contact mentioned only once, a disillusioned former agent of the very faction she sought to expose. The contact was known only by a code phrase and a specific rendezvous point, a forgotten data cafe in the industrial district of Sector 9. It was a risk. The agent might be a trap or simply unwilling, but it was the only path left. She emerged from the service tunnels into a grimy alley, the air thick with the scent of synth fuel and recycled waste. Night had fallen. The city, usually a vibrant tapestry of light, now felt oppressive, watchful. She pulled her hooded cloak tighter, her ears pressed flat against her head, making her less conspicuous. She hailed a battered autocab, giving a vague destination near Sector 9. The driver, a weathered human with tired eyes, grunted a confirmation. The journey was tense. Every passing vehicle, every shadowed figure felt like a threat. Zephyr kept her gaze fixed on the cityscape, her thoughts a whirlwind of strategy and raw emotion. Vector's quiet strength had been her anchor. Now she had to find her own. She had to be as resourceful as he was, as brave. The autocab dropped her blocks from the designated cafe. The district was quiet, the usual late-night activity subdued. The cafe, the data stream, was a narrow, nondescript building tucked between two warehouses. Its neon sign flickered erratically, casting a faint, sickly green glow on the street. She paused, taking a deep breath, scanning her surroundings. No immediate threats. She pushed open the door. A bell chimed, a surprisingly cheerful sound in the desolate space. The interior was dimly lit, mostly empty. A few patrons hunched over flickering data screens, lost in their own worlds. At a corner booth, a solitary figure sat, nursing a steaming mug. The figure was human, cloaked and hooded like her, their face obscured by shadows. This was the contact if the information was still valid. Zephyr approached the booth slowly, her hand instinctively going to the data chip concealed in her pocket. "The current bypass is failing," she said, her voice low, using the coded phrase. The figure didn't look up immediately. Their hand tightened around the mug. "Then new protocols are required," a gruff voice replied, the counterphrase. The figure finally raised their head. It was a woman, her face etched with weariness, but her eyes held a spark of intelligence and something else, a deep-seated resentment. "You're Zephyr," she stated, not a question. "The Lagorian diplomat." Zephyr nodded, sliding into the opposite seat. "And you are Kale." Kale studied her, a long, assessing look that made Zephyr feel transparent. "They said you were compromised, that you failed." "They lied," Zephyr countered, her gaze unwavering. "I have the evidence, and a human paid a heavy price to ensure its retrieval." She pulled out the data chip, placing it discreetly on the table between them. "Vector, a civilian, sacrificed his freedom for this. He bought me the time I needed." Kale's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the chip, then narrowed with a flicker of something akin to recognition or perhaps grim understanding. Vector, she repeated almost to herself. The quiet one. He works in Sector 7. Zephyr felt a surge of surprise. You know him? Not personally, Kale replied, her voice rough, but I know of him. My former handler had him flagged as an unusual variable. Too observant, too principled. He caused minor delays to our surveillance network just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, asking too many quiet questions. Kale leaned forward, her voice dropping. He's a problem for them even before this. Now he's a bigger one. He isn't innocent, Zephyr insisted, her voice tight with emotion. He believed in what was right. He believed in me. Kale picked up the data chip, turning it over in her fingers. The small device seemed to hold the weight of their precarious situation. This is it then. The proof. She looked at Zephyr, a flicker of renewed purpose in her tired eyes. They told me you were dead. They wanted this evidence buried. It's not buried, Zephyr said, her voice firm. And neither am I nor is Vector forgotten. Kale nodded slowly. No, not forgotten. She placed the chip back on the table. They think they've won. They think the trail is cold. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. They underestimated the bunny woman and the quiet human. We need to expose this, Zephyr urged, to the entire planet, to Kalen, to everyone. Agreed, Kale said, her gaze hardening, but not through official channels. They're all dirty. There's only one way to make them listen now. She gestured towards the flickering neon sign outside. We go live. We go live. Kale's words hung in the stale air of the data cafe, a declaration that felt both reckless and entirely necessary. She picked up the data chip again, her thumb tracing its smooth surface. This isn't just about exposing them. It's about saving him. Zephyr met Kale's gaze, her ears pressing back slightly. Vector, yes, he deserves more than to be a forgotten casualty. Her voice held a fierce intensity. How do we do it? The official channels are compromised. Who will believe us? The people will, Kale stated, her eyes scanning the dimly lit cafe as if imagining a larger audience. Not the politicians, not the controlled media. We target the independent networks, the ones still clinging to a shred of journalistic integrity or at least a thirst for a genuine story. She leaned across the table. There's a public broadcast forum, Echoes of Ethel, a live debate program. It's scheduled for tomorrow night. The official they're protecting, Senator Valerius, is a guest. It's a risk, but it's our only window. Senator Valerius. Zephyr's ears flattened in surprise. He's respected. A public figure. It's a bold accusation. He's also the architect of this entire resource grab, Kale countered, her voice low and steady. He orchestrated the Lagorian exchange program as a smokescreen. He's the one who had me silenced. Your data chip, if we can project it live, will shred his credibility. She tapped the chip. This isn't just logs of illegal transfers. It's direct communications, Valerius's own voice, detailing the plan to destabilize Kalen and raid its energy cores. Zephyr's breath hitched, his voice, that's irrefutable. Exactly, Kale affirmed. But getting it onto their system during a live broadcast while Valerius is on air, that's the challenge. Their security will be layered, and once we're in, we'll be exposed. I understand the risk, Zephyr said, her resolve firming. Vector took a greater one for this. I will not let it be in vain. She paused. What's our approach? We can't just walk in. Kale smirked, a fleeting, grim expression. No, but I know the building's infrastructure. I helped design some of their early network security protocols before I became disillusioned. She pointed to a faint scar above her eyebrow. It wasn't always about keeping the truth buried. Sometimes it was about protecting legitimate information. She sighed. There's a maintenance access tunnel beneath the broadcast station. It feeds directly into their server room, but it's a tight squeeze. And it hasn't been used in years. A tight squeeze is fine, Zephyr said, thinking of the narrow ventilation shafts she had navigated with Vector. I'm small and fast. Good, Kale said, a flicker of approval in her eyes. You'll carry the chip. I'll provide the diversion and the access codes. My face is flagged but not my general profile. I can still blend for a while. I'll get us into the sub-level access point. From there you go in." Zephyr nodded, picturing the scenario. The weight of the plan settled heavily upon her, but it was accompanied by a surge of renewed purpose. What about Vector? If we expose this, what happens to him? Kale's expression softened. If we succeed, the entire network behind Valerius will crumble. The agents holding Vector will be exposed. There will be public outcry, investigations. He'll be released. They won't be able to hold an innocent civilian once the truth is out. She looked at Zephyr, but we have to succeed. This is our one chance, and we have to move quickly. They'll be scrambling to find you to bury that chip. Then we prepare, Zephyr said, pushing away from the table. What do we need? Kale stood, her posture straightening, the weariness in her shoulders momentarily forgotten. First, a secure comms channel. Then, a way to bypass internal network firewalls. And finally, a distraction big enough to get you to that server without being noticed. Something that will make everyone look the other way for just a few critical moments. A distraction, Zephyr repeated, a thought forming. She remembered Vector's impromptu power cut in the archives, the sudden darkness, the chaos. Something disruptive but not destructive. Something that draws attention away from the server room. Kale tapped her chin, considering. The Echoes of Ethel Studio uses a complex multi-frequency light array for their broadcasts. It's sensitive. A localized energy surge, focused just enough, could cause a momentary flicker, a system reset. It would be brief, disorienting, long enough for you to slot the chip into a dedicated broadcast port. "Can you create such a surge?" Zephyr asked. "I know a back alley vendor in Sector 12, a former tech specialist from the agency," Kale replied. "He deals in repurposed equipment. He'll have what we need for a price. And he hates Valerius ever since the senator's policies cost him his pension." "Then we go to Sector 12, Zephyr stated, her voice firm. "Tonight, we cannot waste a single moment." Kale retrieved a small, worn data slate from a hidden pouch on her belt. "The broadcast is at 20:00 hours tomorrow. That gives us less than 24 cycles. We will need to be meticulous. Every step planned, every contingency considered." She locked eyes with Zephyr, a deep, shared understanding passing between them. "This isn't just about data, Zephyr. It's about hope. For Ethel, for Kalen, and for a quiet human who believed in the truth." Zephyr felt a comforting warmth spread through her, a blend of fear and fierce determination. "Then let's give them hope," she said, her ears twitching with anticipation, not anxiety. "And let's bring Vector home." They turned and walked out of the grimy cafe, stepping into the cool night towards the urgent, uncertain promise of tomorrow. They emerged from the grimy cafe, the cool night air a stark contrast to the urgency burning within them. Sector 12 was a labyrinth of dim alleys and flickering neon signs, a place where official channels rarely reached. Kale led the way, her movements fluid and practiced, Zephyr following close behind, her ears swiveling, picking up the distant rumble of hovercrafts and the nearer chatter of late-night vendors. "He operates out of a converted comms booth," Kale explained, her voice low. "Look for the broken data repair sign, the one that blinks sporadically." They navigated a narrow passage, the air thick with the scent of recycled oil and cheap synth brew. A single, failing light pulsed above a metal door, casting long, dancing shadows. Kale rapped a specific pattern. After a tense moment, a slit opened, revealing a single, wary eye. "Kale," a gruff voice grumbled, "you're late." "Life intervenes, Jax," Kale replied, pushing the door open further. "We need a frequency surge device, localized, precise, for a broadcast station." The interior was cramped, filled with an assortment of scavenged tech. Wires snaked across the floor, and half-disassembled gadgets lay on every surface. Jax, a stocky figure with grease-stained overalls and a perpetually scowling face, squinted at Zephyr. "Lagorian," he observed, his gaze lingering on her ears. "Big trouble, then." Senator Valerius level big, Kale confirmed. Jax's scowl deepened. Valerius, that worm cost me everything. He turned, rummaging through a pile of components. A surge device, you say, something to make a light array dance a jig. He pulled out a small metallic cylinder no larger than Zephyr's hand, covered in intricate dials and a single glowing indicator light. This beauty will do it. Focused pulse, enough to reset a sensitive system without blowing out the grid. But it's not cheap. Name your price, Zephyr said, stepping forward. Jax eyed her, a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes. For you, bunny woman, and for taking down Valerius, it's a favor. Consider it my contribution to the cause. He handed the device to Zephyr. Be careful with it. One wrong dial and you'll short out half the sector. We will, Zephyr promised, securing the device in her satchel. Thank you, Jax. Don't thank me yet, he grunted. Just make sure that pompous slug pays. They left Jax's booth, the weight of the device a tangible presence. The broadcast station was a formidable structure, its upper levels piercing the night sky. Kale pointed out a recessed service entrance near the loading docks. That's our entry point, Kale explained as they moved through the city's quieter routes. It connects to a network of maintenance tunnels. The server room is 3 levels down, directly beneath the main broadcast studio. And Vector, Zephyr asked, her heart aching at the thought of him. Where is he? Kale hesitated, her gaze sweeping their surroundings. He's being held in a detention block, Sector 4. The same block the agency uses for high-value targets. Valerius wants him kept quiet until after the broadcast, then he'll vanish. How do we get him out? Zephyr pressed, her voice tight. That's part of the plan, Kale said, her voice firm. The detention block is connected to the same service tunnel network. It's risky. But during the chaos of the broadcast, when attention is drawn to the studio, I can use my old access codes to disable the lockdown protocols for a brief window. You trigger the surge, I create the digital diversion, and then I go for Vector. Zephyr's mind raced. It was a terrifyingly intricate dance. You'll be exposed. A necessary risk, Kale stated without a trace of fear. He believed in you, Zephyr. We owe him. They reached the perimeter of the broadcast station an hour before the live show. The air hummed with contained energy. Security patrols moved with precise, rhythmic patterns. Timing is everything, Kale murmured. The shift change is in 10 minutes. We slip in during the overlap. They found cover behind a row of sanitation containers, waiting. Zephyr felt a wave of adrenaline, her ears twitching with every distant sound. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing Vector's quiet strength, his unwavering belief. He had protected her. Now it was their turn. As the guards exchanged positions, Kale moved, a shadow among shadows. Zephyr followed, her smaller frame an advantage as they darted into the service entrance. The air inside was cool, metallic, smelling faintly of ancient dust and lubricants. Kale quickly sealed the door behind them. This way, Kale whispered, leading Zephyr deeper into the narrow, winding tunnels. The passage was dark, lit only by their low-beam flashlights. Pipes snaked along the walls, dripping occasionally. They heard the muffled thud of footsteps from above, the distant chatter of staff. The server room is ahead, Kale indicated a heavy, reinforced door. I'll get to a comms panel. You set up the device. Once I give the signal, activate it. The surge will cause the momentary system reset, drawing immediate attention to the studio's technical issues. At that exact moment, I will upload the data chip and activate the security override for Sector 4. Zephyr nodded, her jaw set. She knew the stakes, not just for Ethel and Kalen, but for Vector. His freedom, his life, depended on their precise execution. She carefully removed Jax's device from her satchel. Its indicator light pulsed a faint, steady green. Good luck, Zephyr, Kale said, a rare warmth in her voice, for all of us. She moved away, disappearing down a side passage to find her access point. Zephyr stood before the server room door. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. She focused on the task, on the image of Valerius on a screen, his lies about to be unmasked. She focused on Vector, imagining the moment he would walk free. The broadcast was seconds from going live. It was time. Zephyr pressed the device against the reinforced door, its faint green pulse intensifying to a steady glow. She closed her eyes, picturing Vector's face, his quiet determination. This was for him. She triggered the activation. A low thrum vibrated through the floor, escalating into a sharp crackle. Inside the studio, a surge of energy momentarily blacked out the main display screen behind Senator Valerius. The broadcast signal flickered wildly, then stabilized, but the studio lights dimmed, plunging the set into an eerie, pulsing glow. Valerius paused mid-sentence, his brow furrowed in annoyance. Technical difficulties, he mumbled, a forced smile on his face. Miles away in Sector 4, the localized frequency surge hit the detention block's security grid. A piercing alarm shrieked, then died, replaced by a deep silence. Vector felt a jolt through his cell floor. The heavy door hissed open, swinging inward. Guards were scrambling in the distance, their shouts muffled. A voice, Kale's, echoed in his comms unit. Go. Now. The main grid is down for 60 seconds. Your sector's locks are overridden. Vector moved instantly. The corridor was empty, the emergency lights casting long, distorted shadows. He ran, relying on his memory of the facility layout. He heard distant footsteps, but they were headed in the opposite direction, toward the broadcast station. The distraction was working. In the broadcast station server room, Zephyr heard the commotion. She felt a surge of triumph mixed with fear. Kale's signal came through. Data upload complete. Valerius's accounts are live. On screen, Valerius was attempting to resume his speech. Suddenly, the large display behind him flared to life, not with his chosen graphics, but with a torrent of financial ledgers, encrypted communication logs, and resource transfer manifests. The data scrolled relentlessly, clear for the entire interspecies audience to see. Valerius's face drained of color. He stammered, "This is a fabrication. A hack." The broadcast cut to a split screen. On one side, Valerius's panicked face. On the other, Ambassador Alara, her expression grave but resolute. "Senator Valerius's assertions are baseless," she stated calmly. "The evidence presented is undeniable. These documents reveal a systematic exploitation of Kalen's resources and a deliberate campaign to destabilize peace for personal gain." Her words resonated with authority. Zephyr watched from a concealed monitor in a service hallway. Kale appeared beside her, a grim satisfaction on her face. "It's done." The entire network saw it. Vector burst out of the detention center into the night air, disoriented by the city's chaos. Public screens blared with the news. He saw Alara's face, then Zephyr's image, a still shot from a diplomatic archive, superimposed next to the scrolling evidence. He knew. He looked up at the towering broadcast station, a beacon of truth in the suddenly exposed darkness. Zephyr and Kale navigated the chaotic streets, making their way to a prearranged safe point. Every public screen showed Valerius being led away in cuffs, his career and reputation shattered. The threat to Kalen and Ethel was over. "He'll be looking for you," Kale said, her voice softer than Zephyr had ever heard it. "I'll make sure you're clear." Zephyr found Vector at their old coffee spot, now closed for the night, its metal shutters drawn. He stood hunched, watching the last of the news reports flicker on a distant building. His quiet strength was a tangible presence. "Vector," she whispered. He turned, his eyes wide with relief. He moved forward, covering the distance between them in 2 long strides, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Her ears flattened against his shoulder, a profound comfort. "You're safe," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Because of you," Zephyr replied, pulling back slightly to look at him. "You saved me, Vector, more than once." Kale appeared from the shadows, a faint smile on her lips. "The official statement from Ambassador Alara is clear. Valerius and his entire network are being apprehended. The peace treaty will proceed with new safeguards in place." She looked at Vector. Your actions, Vector, were instrumental. Ambassador Alara has already inquired about your well-being and your future. Vector felt a warmth spread through him. His quiet observations, his instincts had made a difference. He looked at Zephyr. What about your future? Zephyr's ears twitched, but this time it was with hope. Ambassador Alara offered me a legitimate diplomatic post here on Ethel, to help rebuild trust, to forge new alliances. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. My mission here is not quite finished. Not yet. A month later, Vector and Zephyr sat on the express commuter train to Sector 7, just like old times. The journey was smooth, peaceful. He watched her, not working in a worn notebook but reading a datapad, a slight smile on her face. Her ear twitches were no longer signs of anxiety but small, expressive movements, a language only he understood. Vector no longer felt like an invisible observer. He now worked alongside Zephyr, his keen eye for detail and understanding of Ethel's nuances proving invaluable in her new diplomatic role. He had found his purpose, not in quiet solitude, but in shared endeavor. The new Kale and Ethel Cultural Exchange Program is fully funded, Zephyr said, looking up from her datapad. We start next cycle. Good, Vector replied, a quiet contentment settling over him. There's a lot of work to do. He reached for her hand, their fingers lacing together. The train moved forward, carrying them towards a future they were building together, one gentle, purposeful journey at a time. Their story, born from a silent commute and forged in galactic intrigue, had found its warm, unwavering path.